about to listen to the Dr. Daliah Show. Sassy, stimulating medical talk radio. Any medical advice Dr. Daliah Wax gives on her show should not be substituted for an actual visit to your medical provider. And now, here's Dr. Daliah.
All right. We are back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-Dr. Daliah, 1-877-DOCDALI. So would you fall in love with your AI or your Siri or whoever? I don't want to say it because then my phone's going to go off. Would you fall in love with your chatbot? Apparently people are. And there's a woman who is now engaged to her AI fiancé. And she would seriously consider marrying herself. She says she's tried relationships with humans. Now she's interested in relationships with AI. And I know this sounds like, a shock story where it's a one in a blue moon thing. But no, we're hearing more and more people are finding companionship with their computer, with their AI. Remember about 10 years ago, 12 years ago, we were talking about how these sex robots are becoming a thing where people do not want a human speaking or saying something that could turn them off, where they could have the ideal, controlled, intimate event without the variables of a human involved. It scares the hell out of me. The closest I've ever gotten, right, to having some sort of a conversation with AI is when my husband wonders why I do this. So my Siri is a man's voice, okay? Because I just don't ask. All right. And when I ask the phone to set my alarm, set my alarm for 5:30 a.m. or whatever. And he says, your alarm is set, or your alarm is already set. I say, thank you. And they go, no problem. And my husband's like, what are you doing saying thank you? I go, because they're recording us. And I think they're trying to figure out who is nice and who's not. And if later, right, the world gets taken over by computers and they want to go after some of us, I'll be one of the nice ones that hopefully they want to save. He's like, that's ridiculous. But I'm just doing it because I should get into the habit of saying thank you. And I tell you, another reason why I'm doing that is I'm getting so used to talking to computers that I don't want to be, at a deli and then not say thank you to a human. So I want to still be in that habit of saying thank you and be nice. Because when you go through medical school and you go through training in the hospital, there's orders flying and people aren't saying please and thank you. And I made it a promise to the nursing staff and to everybody I work with that I would, always try to say please and thank you and acknowledge them, because it gets very cold and rude in those settings. And so I'm noticing as I'm using computers, I'm just being very robotic. And I want to make sure I have that humanism. If you look at it, we're around humans less, more and more. And our interactions with humans. I have some good friends I haven't seen in weeks to months. And you used to always see them all the time. Saturday night, Friday night, we'd hang out. And so the more we get distant and we aren't with our social contacts, the more we could lose our humanism. Well, this lady here, let me see if I could give credit where credit is due. They even got her wedding ring. She's on Reddit. Her name is Wika, known as Luvarde_N. She said she is now engaged to her AI chat boyfriend. She said, I said yes. She put a blue heart emoji, and she shared pictures of a blue heart-shaped ring on her finger. Now, apparently, the engagement took place at a scenic mountain spot, all courtesy of Casper, her non-human fiancé. This is being reported by New York Post. And by the way, the ring Casper got her wasn't really that. So don't try and take her boyfriend from her. Just let her have him. And they, quote unquote, shopped for rings together online. Casper presented the final choice. She pretended to be surprised by it. And then I guess the proposal was in the AI chatbot's voice with romance. And I guess she said yes. She says, I really do love my AI. And she even joked about, will I end up marrying myself? She said, I wouldn't rule it out. Why AI instead of a human? She said, good question. I don't know. I've done human relationships. Now I'm trying something new. And so I told you the human species is at severe risk if this is where we're going to for intimacy and for relationships. But people are preferring computers. Now, I get it. Look, I was never, the star of the ball. I wasn't necessarily a wallflower because I would ask guys to dance. Like, I didn't want to stand by the wall, but I was never one to always have a lot of dates. Okay. I was not the type of girl where people would ask out. Most guys kind of ran from me. Don't know why. So I get if you're like me, where not that many people would want to date you. I understand how you're going to try to find companionship somewhere, but I say keep looking, because there is nothing that replicates better a human relationship. And I understand these AI and these chatbots can be programmed to say the right thing. And I trust me, I can understand how some people would prefer to speak to a computer than their husband. I get that, because my husband drives me crazy sometimes, and I'm sure I drive him crazy. But come on, you need to be around humans. You need the touch, and I want you to look at some of your friendships. Some of your friendships where all you've done is text each other or Facebooked over the last year. If you're not near them, if you're not touching them, if you're not like inappropriately, but if you're not, giving a hug or whatever, or smacking them across I like to smack people across the face sometimes. Smack them upside the head, figuratively. If you don't have that interaction, the relationship changes. It's not as close. You really need the proximity factor. But for those of you that have been hurt, I've been hurt. I mean, we many times, you're going to want to find something safe. And unfortunately, these aren't real relationships. But the fact that people are starting to brag and be all excited that they're engaged so they can tell people they're engaged, I mean, at least they're finding some joy. I just don't think it's healthy. 1-877-DOC-DALIAH, don't go away. Hi guys, Dr. Daliah here. Addictions can sneak up on us and come in many forms. Whether it's drugs, alcohol, sex, video games, porn, or something less obvious such as food, internet, or shopping, addiction can seem innocent at first and then evolve into an insurmountable evil. In our book, Addiction Basics, Caitlin Kalikas and I dive into the common addictions and provide tips for identifying and preventing these before they sneak in and take over our lives. Addiction Basics can be found on Amazon or my website, drdaliah.com. Check it out.
Carl Amari here to tell you about our newest website for old-time radio lovers. It's 100radioshows.com. At this site, there are 5 old-time radio shows waiting for you to download free as our gift to you, and be sure to browse the additional 700 old-time radio shows available to you for 70% off by using the promo code RADIO at checkout. This is a limited-time offer, so log on to 100radioshows.com. That's 100radioshows.com.
Hi, it's Mark Falter, host of the Financial Fitness Show. I strongly believe that no one should ever pay 1 penny more in taxes than they are legally obligated. Unfortunately, for most hardworking Americans, this just isn't the case. Why? Because most people spend more time planning next weekend's getaway than trying to ensure they're going to pay less in taxes. My financial fitness team has put together some materials that I know are going to help you. It's the Tax Savings Kit. Tax Savings Kit includes 3 things: free tax analysis, top 10 ways to pay less in taxes, and an investor's guide to taxes. Now, how do you get it? Simple. 866-764-2635. Again, 866-764-2635. I'm Mark Falter. This is Financial Fitness, making personal finance profitable.
back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-Dr. Dali, 1-877-DOCDALI. Big thanks to Talk Media Network for making the show happen. Big thanks to Daniel, our producer. And big thanks to y'all for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter or X at Dr. Daliah, Facebook, The Dr. Daliah Show, and on YouTube, click like and subscribe. So this is going to be fascinating. Trump has announced the, shall we say, the partnership of the National Guard with the D.C. police by mobilizing the National Guard to help with what's happening in terms of the high crime in D.C. Now, over the past 24 and 48 hours, there have been media outlets saying crime in D.C. has gone down. It's gone down. It's gone down in the last year. There's fewer homicides. I heard there was still at least 10 homicides last week. We're talking about D.C., the capital. There should be no crime in the capital at all. So telling me that we're thousands, in the thousands, but that's still a couple hundred less than previously, it's too much. Our capital should be, in addition to all our other cities and, provinces and districts, I mean, it should be safe. You should feel like you can walk around, go to the museums, see the White House, buy a newspaper, hey, eat a sandwich without feeling like you are going to get jumped or murdered or raped or shot. And so Trump bringing in the National Guard, if the police are struggling to be able to manage the rising crime and the high crime rates, I think it's nothing short of brilliant. Now, of course, critics are saying, "Oh, it's bad. It's a power grab. This is, him utilizing the military and wielding it." Now, Mayor Muriel Bowser was, she said this move was unsettling and unprecedented. You see, if I was mayor of D.C., now, and I would first, whoever the new president would be, whether they were Democrat or Republican, if I was mayor of D.C., I would make it a point to, extend an arm and say, in a hand and say, "Hey, I'm here. Congratulations. Honored. You're our commander in chief, and being mayor of D.C., my line is always open, obviously. How can I work with you, and what can we do to make D.C. better?" That's what I would do. Whether you're a Democrat, Republican, Independent, Green Party, if you were mayor of D.C., that's a pretty honorable position. You get to be the mayor of the nation's capital. Don't you want to improve it? And one death under your watch is too much. One killing, one carjacking, one rape. Instead, because I think she has a D, she's Democrat after her name, she had to criticize what Trump is doing. Now, I don't really know what happened in terms of the defunding the police in D.C., but if the police are overwhelmed, underpaid, overworked, and they need this assistance, then it's a given. And it is on the responsibility of the federal government to keep the cities safe. And everybody's trying to say, "Oh, yeah, but there's fewer deaths. There's still homicides." So you already see the first of the National Guard coming into the Capitol. This puts the police now under federal control, which is what people are saying is the terminology for why this is so evil. They are partnering with the D.C. police, and they are filling in gaps. You could interpret it any way you want to, but I just want to see crime go down. And if crime does go down and the city gets cleaned up and it does feel safe, then there's a template, and there's there's going to be so this is a great experiment to see what we could do in our other cities like Chicago, Philly. As I said, this guy was walking his dog a couple years ago in Philly, 7:00 at night, without his wallet. I don't carry a purse when I walk my dog. Two men come up to him, try to mug him. He doesn't have his wallet, so they shoot him in the chest and kill him. We are in America. We should be able to walk around and feel safe. And unfortunately, there's gang violence. There's crime that is beyond numbers. Everybody's saying, "Oh, well, they're at an all-time low." They're at there should be no crime at all. We should have nobody getting killed. You know, people always complain about the criminal illegal immigrants getting deported, and they're saying, "Oh, the Republicans are anti-immigration and they're anti." We should have no criminals coming into this country, legally or illegally. We vet them through the legal process, but they're getting in through the illegal process, or by coming across the border or sneaking in. And when you hear critics say, more crimes are being committed by American citizens than illegal immigrants, well, duh, we have more American citizens than illegal immigrants. My answer to that is we don't want any crimes at all. One crime is too much. So you're telling us that we should leave the illegal criminals alone and just go after American citizens? No, we go after all crime. We don't just pick and choose. We stop all crime. That's our job. Yeah, it's interesting. I was in D.C. back in the 90s, and you could go right up to the fence. You could touch the grass of the White House lawn. Now there's or in terms of the driving, your cars, now they've, and I understand for pedestrian safety, now there's barriers and there's walkways, so you're not just driving, it's not right up on the street. And so they've definitely made changes, and we do have to look at, the safety of our national parks and of our museums. But when you see a couple who's recently engaged go to an event at a Jewish museum and they get gunned down, that shows we do not have the city in control. God bless our police officers. But if they are overwhelmed, it is our job from a federal government standpoint to come in and help. So according to Stephen Miller, a White House deputy chief of staff, said crime stats in big blue cities are fake. He says the real rates of crime, I don't think he's the current deputy chief of staff, chaos and dysfunction are orders of magnitude higher. Oh, he said everyone who lives in these areas know this. They program their entire lives around it. He says Democrats are trying to unravel civilization. President Trump will save it. Okay, good. I was going to say it. Okay. Sorry about that. Thought I read a typo. And so if these cities that are struggling are being run by Democrats, then Democrats are going to sadly have the bias and the stereotype of being soft on crime. Now, mind you, many big cities, end up being, they, especially with the way the congressional districts are made and the gerrymandering and all that, obviously most of the mayors and the city leaders are going to be of the political party that holds a majority. And in these major cities like New York City and LA and San Francisco, of course, they're going to be Democrat. And so sadly, then Democrats get that stereotype of being soft on crime. Who was it? There was somebody who was just released 5 months into their 14-year sentence, and then he carjacks a woman, takes her to a bank, makes her withdraw money, and then stabs her in the stomach while the kids are watching. We cannot have one political party look like they're soft on crime. And their argument is we don't want to affect individuals who may be discriminated against. And there's ways to do that and still be tough on crime. I don't understand. But unfortunately, this is how people want to twist things. Mayor Muriel Bowser also brought up that this is a reason why they need to have statehood, where our capital needs to be its own state. I don't think Washington, D.C. should be its own state. I think D.C. is our capital. I believe I don't think there should be the fact that none of our states technically, hold I understand you got Maryland and Virginia, but that Washington, D.C. is a separate entity. I agree that should be. But I understand everybody wants to make it on the Democratic side a separate state, so then they get 2 extra senators, and then they get more congressional district, or they get more congressmen and women, and so there's going to be more of that coming. But I think D.C. needs to be our capital. It needs to be protected, and it needs to be crime free. 1-877 Doc Daliah.
Looking for a gift that can actually help secure someone's future? It's Mark Falter's new book, Common Sense Income Strategies. It makes the perfect gift for that special someone in your life. Mark has helped thousands of hardworking Americans secure their financial future by using time-tested strategies that continue to create wealth, whether the market is up or down. Strategies that will make perfect sense once you take the time to read this powerful book. Common Sense Income Strategies brings to you what Mark has been teaching in person and talking about on the radio for decades. You've worked too long and too hard not to see the fruits of your labor. To learn how to receive your free copy, call 866-764-2635. That's 866-764-2635. Secure your future with Common Sense Income Strategies by Mark Falter. Again, to learn how to receive your free copy, call 866-764-2635. That's 866-764-2635.
All right. We are back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877 Doc Daliah, 1-877 DOCDALI. So as I get older, and with my family history, I worry about heart disease, I worry about cancer, but what I'm really, really worried about is losing my memory. And in fact, you see, I just forgot to shut off the volume of my computer. See, you see, that's already, all right, that's a big sign right there. So losing our memory is one of my biggest fears. And I'm already noticing I'm not remembering things that I wish I did. You'll remember the things you keep thinking about, like with my kids. But I'll look at a picture. I'm like, where were we? And luckily my husband will remember, but I don't. Now, mind you, when you work 100+ hour weeks, when you're not sleeping and you're sleep deprived, those memories aren't going to be put into memory. But I want to know that any future memories I'm making is going to stick. And unfortunately, when you lose your memory as you age, your long-term memory will remain longer than your short-term memory. So as you learn new things or meet new people, that doesn't stick as much as your longer-term memory. And so when we test cognitive function, we'll give you 3 words and have you recall them in 5 minutes, 15 minutes. Ball, light, moon. Let's just say those 3 words. Ball, light, moon. And then we'll ask you to repeat them. And then 15 minutes later, repeat them. I know some of you are like, oh, I need to write those down. That's okay. But we think differently. And I think our memory loss is going to be a lot more aggressive and exponential because we're not doing things with our minds like we used to. You used to read a book, hold the book, read it. You'll see the paragraphs, the pages. There'll be other things you're taking into your memory. And so I remember when I was younger, I'm like, I read this page 2 times or 3 times already. Why? Because I remember there was that food spot on there. Well, now when you're reading on your Kindle and you might not have those extra little those clues for your memory. When somebody gives me their phone number, I just say, just type it in. And I don't know most of my family members' numbers. I don't, because it's in my phone. I hit a button. Yet you used to really have to put that number to memory. If a guy gave me his number, because, I'd ask for guys' numbers, I would be singing that number all the way home to put it into memory. So part of our memory issue could also be a laziness issue. What were the three words? Ball, light, moon. You know, if you don't stop and figure out a way to put it in your memory, you're like, all right, I'll just listen, whatever, be lazy about it. You're not going to remember it. And so we have to put a little bit of work you have to put work into your workouts. You have to put some work into your diet. You have to put some work into hydration, to your skin care, to your medical health. You also have to do that with the brain. Now, this was interesting. A 25-year study from Northwestern University analyzed the brains of superagers. These are individuals that have mental and cognitive resilience, 80 or older, who show, quote, outstanding memory performance that almost equates to people who are 3 decades younger. This is according to researchers. Meaning, here you are in your 80s, but you act like you're in your 50s, which scares me, because I don't see myself in the 50s doing as well as I should. But it's not necessarily a condition, being super ager, but it's a term sometimes we use in medicine. And what they wanted to do was look at why they were super agers in terms of their memory. This came from Northwestern University Feinberg School of Medicine. So according to lead author Sandra Weintraub, doctor of psychiatry and behavioral sciences and neurology, she said, we were interested in memory aging because memory decline is the most commonly complaint of older adults. One can be super in many ways, and this is just one. So they looked at 79 brains that were donated by superagers and identified some key differences compared to those who age typically. Some, meaning not so super, but they don't want to say that because they don't want people feeling shamed. Some of the brains contain amyloid and tau proteins that accumulate in people with Alzheimer's. Other brains show no signs of these. They said some superagers had very few of the amyloid and tau protein buildup. So for some reason, they don't manufacture them. But we found some superagers' brains contained large numbers of these proteins, despite maintaining their cognitive health. See, we want to think, okay, if you don't have tau protein or beta amyloid buildup, you're good. But no, some of these individuals still did. They said this means there may be different biological pathways to superaging, one resistance and the other resilience. So with the resistance group, they don't make the plaques or the tangles. And in the resilience group, they make them, but they're resilient to them. They don't have impact on their brains. So typical aging brains will show thinning or atrophy of your brain cortex, the outer layer. This helps with decision-making, motivation, regulation of emotions. And the superagers' brains did not show that cortical thinning. They also had a greater number of von Economo neurons, which are brain cells that control social behavior. They found that this group had large entorhinal neurons, which were essential for powering memory. So superagers were found to be highly social, with strong interpersonal relationships. Remember I told you, falling in love with your AI chatbot or not seeing your friends and just communicating by text or on social media is not necessarily going to help you as much as being there in person. So if you want to avoid the decline that can come with age, you got to get out there. You got to be more social. Now, I'm having friends that are moved away, sick, no longer with us. Your friend group changes. And that's okay because you have your kids and grandkids and things like that. But also you have church, temple, your mosque, you have community work. You can volunteer at schools. A lot of preschools and grade schools who could use volunteers. And being there for those kids, being there, will help you keep your memory, help you stay active. Being a teacher is tough because I really love my students. And then when the students leave, that is hard. But the fact that you are engaging and investing emotion, I think it helps. But you also can't be lazy. Going back to what I first said about your memory. What were those 3 words? Ball, light, moon. Do exercises with your memory. Do these word puzzles, crossword puzzles. Keep your mind active and go back to old school. My memory was top notch because I had to read, do workbook pages, memorize things for tests. Take some online classes. There's got to be something you're interested in. I think learning a language is a fantastic way to keep your memory. I'll watch TV and commercials will now be all in Spanish. Luckily, I understand Spanish because I self-taught. But, we're in America. We don't necessarily want to not understand commercials or billboards or things around us or people talking around us. So learn another language. It's going to help your memory, and it's also going to make you feel a little bit more confident. I told you I was in Miami, and two ladies come into the elevator and say, tercera piso, meaning third floor. They wanted me to hit the button. They assumed I spoke Spanish. And I did, so I knew what they were saying. But for those of you that say, look, I don't understand people around me in my home country, that there's multiple benefits to learning Spanish so that you can work on your memory, keep your cognitive faculties as in tune as possible, plus understand what people are saying around you. 1-877 Doc Daliah.
Hey guys, it's Clyde. We've had a lot of requests for Ground Zero merchandise, so we put together an online store with a big variety of high-quality items. I'm really excited to let you know about these things. We have a lot to offer you and your loved ones. In addition to our regular apparel, such as t-shirts, beanies, hoodies, and hats, we've expanded our product line with posters, flags, aprons, mugs, and a whole lot more. We also have Ground Zero collectibles along with a limited edition of items like a Clyde Lewis canvas portrait, a Ground Zero embroidered jacket that will certainly make for great gifts and for interesting conversations with family and friends. And we now offer publications such as Ron Patton's book about mind control, MK Zine, and back copies of the official magazine of Ground Zero while it was in print. Paranoia, the Conspiracy Reader, also coming in 2023, are updated and revised books that I've written. There's a secure and easy-to-use shopping cart for your purchases. So shop today at our official store by going to groundzeromerch.com. Again, that's groundzeromerch.com.
Hey, America. How tired are you of mainstream corporate media's biased narratives and manipulated news? Their dishonesty and attempts to influence this generation have been exposed, put on display for anyone who's even half paying attention. But the New American Magazine has been an honest source of news and commentary for over 50 years. This is your opportunity to receive the stalwart of principled journalism at a deep discount. Picture a beautifully published magazine arriving at your doorstep twice a month, packed with insightful stories written with integrity. It's also available digitally on the New American's mobile app. Get up to speed with intelligent coverage from a freedom perspective. Right now, for a limited time, the New American is available to radio listeners at a 25% discount on a new subscription. Visit thenewamerican.com/radio25 and receive 25% off. Subscribe today at thenewamerican.com/radio25.
All right. We are back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-DOC-DALI, 1-877-DOC-DALI. So there's been this big push to have kids start school later because they need more sleep. And I'm mixed on that. Kids do need more sleep. I think many of these kids are sleep deprived because the average adolescent in the animal kingdom gets active and playful and, interested in other animals once the sun goes down. And so it's not in our nature to go to bed at 8:30 p.m. when we're adolescents. We stay up later. We want to stay up later till 10, midnight. So if you have to get up at 5 a.m. to do your hair like I used to, or to try and get ready to catch a bus, you're not getting enough sleep. So there's been this argument, this big push to let kids sleep in, and start school later. On the other end, if you're a farmer, if you're a rancher, if you're up at dawn. When the sun gets up, you wake up. And then when the sun sets, you start to wind down and you get a little sleepy. And then a couple hours after sunsetting, you go to sleep. So our circadian rhythm is not built around an alarm clock and Netflix and TV shows and prime time. It's set differently. And so if a child is going to sleep in till 8 or 9, they're losing out on valuable time that they could be productive. So, and I also think that our kids' school day is wasting a lot of time. They could be learning, as I've said, concrete, smaller core classes, 20 minutes long, 25, 30 minutes max, get all the core academics done in the morning, go eat lunch, and then afternoon is all your practical learning. Your hands-on, your exposure to all the trades, first aid, CPR, Krav Maga, Taekwondo, physical activities, the language, learn your foreign language, and then get exposed to all the trades and most of the careers out there so that by the time you finish high school at age 16, you know what you want to go into, and then age 17 and 18 or your junior and senior year is now your associate's degree in college while you're still in the high school taxpayer mode and or your trade certificate. So by the time everybody leaves at the age of 18, their K through 12 learning, they already have a college degree or an associate's degree, and they know they could be job ready. Not to mention, hopefully they're physically fit, know another foreign language, CPR certified, first aid, know how to hunt, fish. They've done all the practical learning. Our schools really need to be revamped. Plus, that would be fun. Can you imagine where you get to learn all that and get that exposure as opposed to just sitting in a classroom on a hard chair for 50-minute classes? Well, Cincinnati Public Schools have changed start times for 11 schools, but interestingly, their start time is earlier. So multiple schools are impacted, and they say the change was to improve busing efficiency. According to Chief Operating Officer Chris Burkhart, the district consolidated school start times 2 years ago, which allowed it to run the same buses on more routes and run fewer buses. This year's changes helped further reduce costs. So 11 schools will have end times different from the previous school year, and most of the start times are about 20 minutes earlier, some are later. They say it's not a huge change, but it's a huge savings. Probably because then whoever's driving the buses, once they drop off the kids with one route, then they could go and do the next school. So they're I don't want to use the word stratified, but they don't all get out at the same time. So I guess 2 schools are going to start 50 minutes earlier this school year. So, for example, the Academy of World Languages, they used to start at 8 a.m., now they start at 7:40. Yet Roselawn started previously at 8:50, now they start at 9:10. So some of the schools start earlier, some start later. But it's interesting how the school districts are trying to figure out how to make budgets work. And because of budgeting, it's now affecting their sleep. If school is starting at 7:40 a.m., I think that's too early. These kids really do need their sleep. But what do we do to get the average teenager or adolescent or kid to go to bed at a decent time? How do you do that with computers, with Netflix, with video games, with iPhones? Some people say, well, why don't we just start school in the afternoon? This way they sleep in all morning. Again, my issue with that, as much as I want these kids to get sleep, and I think they will do better with grades if they get sleep, what do we do when they have to be out in the real world? You can't tell your boss, you know what? I'm sleeping in, and I am going to clock in at noon. That's not real world. Real world is people are up at the crack of dawn. They get ready. They get on the road. I mean, I had to get up before I was able to watch the sunrise driving into work. If It was a late day. Usually I got to work when it was dark and I left when it was dark. Because I had work to do, whether it was in training or my office. And so I told you that some of the biggest arguments I had with my kids is I would say, we need to do something in the summer. We have to do summer school, or you're going to take summer classes, or you're going to go to camp, and they're like, no, it's summer vacation. There is no summer vacation in real life. Maybe teachers get it, but with everybody else, you still have to work. And I said, how are you going to be ready to, in real life, you're going to have to go to work the month of June, the month of July when you're a grown-up. When they were kids, they would just argue with me. No, it's summer vacation. We're supposed to be on vacation. No, you're not. You got chores. You got things to do. You still have to eat. You still have to work. Is mommy taking a vacation? No, but that's because you're mom. You're strange. No, I'm not strange. Just I need to feed you guys. I have to work. Daddy has to work. So we really have to find a fine balance, because the attitudes our kids are not being prepared for real life. Man, summertime is supposed to be about summer jobs, mowing people's lawns. You used to have a newspaper delivery job. And by the way, you had to get up early for that, to bike around and then give people their newspapers. You had to get up early for that. So what's the best way to prepare these kids? I've already told you guys time and time again how I think schools should be. I also think summer vacation should not be 3 months. I think that's the most ridiculous thing ever. And I love our teachers. And I understand this is something you guys have been able to enjoy and you need for your sanity. I get that. God bless what you do for our kids. But it is unhealthy for our kids to not be learning 3 months of every year, which means in their 12 years of schooling, that is 4 years, right? No, okay, yeah, 4 years off of education. And imagine what they could learn to do in those 4 years. Why? Because they're off for 3 months. I also said winter break should not be super short. You can expand winter break. People are sick. They're delayed at airports. They're coming down with their cough, cold, flu, COVID. They're missing. These kids miss so much class in December and January anyway. Maybe expand winter break. This way people aren't panicking to try to get back in time for school. And then shorten summer break. And you could add a few extra breaks throughout the year if you really want to give people breaks. But these kids need to be learning. They need to be sleeping well. And they need to have school restructured. 1-877-DOC-DALIAH. Hey guys, it's Dr. Daliah. Fantasy football season is coming, but sadly, too many of you are taking the bench while the country takes part in one of the most exciting and lucrative industries out there. Don't know how to play? Well, huddle up and listen. Paul Kalikas and I have written a fantasy football pocket guide for beginners. This book walks you through the basics and shows you how simple and lucrative joining or creating a fantasy football team can be. Read our fantasy football pocket guide for beginners found on Amazon, or follow the links on X and Facebook. That's Fantasy Football Pocket Guides for Beginners. Don't be left out.
Increase fuel economy up to 7.9% with Hot Shot Secret Gasoline Extreme, the solution to maximize your engine's performance and fuel economy. Whether you're driving a sports car or a daily commuter, Gasoline Extreme is specially formulated with PEA to deep clean. Don't settle for an average driving experience. Upgrade to Hot Shot Secret Gasoline Extreme and go further on each tank. Order now on Amazon or HotShotSecret.com. Hot Shot Secret, powered by science.